Welcome to Access All Areas, a podcast series brought to you by the expert training provider Access Training. We're going to be exploring the people, pathways and partnerships shaping the future of skills and training. Today, it's all about Level 7 accountancy. And with me, I've got a panel of experts, including trainer and expert Janice Kirkbride. Hi, Janice.
Hello.
We've got Managing Director and, might I add, Chartered Accountant David Armstrong.
Hi, Beth.
Hi. And last but not least, we've got our very own Accounts Assistant and Apprentice, Lucy Blythe. Hi, Lucy.
Hi.
Fabulous. So first and foremost, just to set the scene, what is Level 7 and why does it matter? So, David, if you could please, can you please explain what the Level 7 Accountancy Apprenticeship actually is?
Yeah, so this is Access Training. This is our first venture into the chartered world of accountancy. We're offering two routeways through ACCA and CIMA. It's up to a 3-year programme. It's an opportunity for our learners, our apprentices, to become chartered accountants.
Fabulous. And would you say that it's an equal split of sort of in work and day release hours, or
through an apprenticeship? It is 20% of their time is spent on off-the-job training, so they'll be spending 1 day a week as day release with us in the classroom, and the rest of the time's at their employer.
Amazing. And why would you say it's important for Access to be offering this course?
It's an ambition that we've had for years. We've delivered for years the accountancy training in through the AAT levels 2, 3 and 4. Because of the impending defunding of Level 7 apprenticeships, it's something that we as I say, we'd had the ambition to do, but now is the time to do it so that we can offer that to our employers and essentially save them quite a significant amount of money if they use the apprenticeship route.
Fabulous. And obviously we did mention that you yourself are chartered. Which pathway did you go down, if you don't mind us asking?
CIMA, yes. I became a chartered accountant through CIMA 10 years ago.
Fabulous. Great stuff. Now, Janice, from a training perspective,
Yes.
how do you approach a high-level qualification such as this?
Well, you start off by focusing on what the ultimate objectives are. So that's either advising the board of directors, for example, on a larger sized company, or it might be advising a specific client on what they need to look at with regards to their finances or lending. So you start with those aims in mind of what the profession is likely to do and what the final exams are going to ask them to do. And then from that, you then build down. So ultimately what we're looking at is a really strong business awareness as well as incredibly strong technical knowledge. And to that end, building in workshops, business awareness, CPD, as well as the technical experience with application, evaluation, the ability to recommend in that environment. And then finally, step 4 is really giving them their voice to communicate as effectively as possible, whether that be through presentations or whether that be through reports or meetings.
So is it fair to say that this programme allows learners to grow in other areas then, not just the knowledge around sort of accountancy?
Absolutely. I mean, the skill sets of the accounting qualifications are there to support problem solving. They're there to be decision makers, strategic planners of the future. So there's a lot of elements inside that. I'm glad you asked the question, actually. And the reason I'm glad that you asked the question is there was a very strong skill gap between what the accountants knew and experienced as exam qualifications and what actually was necessary in the world of work. So the accounting profession highlighted that as an issue. And one of the things that is unique really to the Access course that I'm incredibly excited about is that we are adding things like an emotional intelligence, problem solving, and doing lots of wonderful things like, for example, you can learn an income statement and a balance sheet. That's all well and good, but what you want to be able to do is then be able to do a Power BI to present it in a board meeting, or being able to use the Excel spreadsheet as effectively as possible. And that's to add value in the workplace from time naught right the way through to when they finish their qualifications. So those added values like project management, conflict, etc., we love to support the learners in.
And for Lucy, really, what made you choose this route? What made you choose sort of the level 7 apprenticeship route?
Yeah, so I've always been interested in accounts. I've made my way through AAT, and it sort of got to a point where I wanted to push myself a little bit further. I wanted to sort of have doors opened for possible management roles in the future. And I think the level 7 is really helping with that, sort of understanding the background of sort of what goes on in the account a lot more than just like the basics that you might learn at a lower level.
Yeah, and is it the ACC or CIMA that you...
It's CIMA, yeah, which is a lot more sort of suited to the industry that I'm in.
Fabulous. And how's your experience been so far, do you think? What's been the most surprising part, if there's been any?
I think probably the biggest surprise is the jump between the levels. I think it's definitely a massive step up from level 4. Even between level 3 and 4 it is quite a step, but level 7 it's for people who really want to do it and are really sort of keen to push themselves further. It's not sort of for people who want to stay at like a lower level. It's for people who do want to sort of progress in their career.
Yeah, and in your experience then, sort of what's the contact like with the trainers? You know, do you get extra support or anything, or
yeah,
how do you find it?
Definitely, access is great for that sort of thing. It's not just in the classroom that you have contact with the trainers. You know, if you wanted to email for any help or any support, if you needed sort of out of hour support, everyone's sort of on board with that. There's skills coaches and trainers that you can contact if you need any help any of the time. Yeah, it's very hands-on and very helpful.
So it's safe to say it's not just learning out of a textbook then?
Oh, absolutely not. No, there's lots of different styles of learning that we'll cover, even just in the sessions as well. It's very interactive. You know, we'll do textbook sort of items, but there'll also be online bits that we do, quizzes, knowledge tests, that sort of thing. It's not just reading out of a textbook, no.
Fab. And how are you balancing your work and study then? Obviously we know that you're an accounts assistant as well. How are you finding that?
Yeah, so because of the day release, it means that I don't sort of have to do any work outside of like any sort of coursework outside of work hours or on a weekend if I don't have to. Obviously, if I did want to push myself further and for prep for exams, I would do that. But with it being the day release, it's like a full day's work per week that we do on the CIMA. So it's plenty of work that we do. Fabulous.
And David, how do you see apprentices like Lucy sort of contributing to their organisations in the long term?
There's a skills gap with accountancy at the moment. The employers that we talk to, external stakeholders that we talk to, there is a gap. There's a struggle to find qualified accountants. So this is it's a cost-effective way of doing it. It breaks down barriers. The cost can be prohibitive if you have to go down the commercial route. So giving people the opportunity to look to develop individuals and staff members in this way it's a really positive thing.
Fabulous. And obviously we've touched on the different pathways, the CIMA and ACCA. So Janice, could you break down the differences between the two for us?
Yes. When you're looking at the CIMA qualification, I'll start there. It's very business orientated. So there's a lot of management, conflict, project management, learning about supply chains, looking at strategic planning, because the person that we're developing is somebody who's going to advise strategically long term and is the internal consultant. So it goes back to those final objectives of being able to respond to the board and maybe even beyond the board, looking long term. So that's CIMA. So they deal with the business and then risk, which is a key area, especially since we've had the likes of COVID and our current economic climate, managing through all of these potential potholes is a piece of gold really for any organisation. And then finally the return, the profit margin for the business. Again, very important for all of the stakeholders. So that's the CIMA qualification. The ACCA qualification is interesting, and it's basically a bit of a combination. The majority of people that I sort of see tend to be from a practice environment, but the qualification itself actually bridges both industry and practice. The reason I say that is because the profession includes accounting, it includes tax, but when you get to the option papers at the strategic level, you actually have the options to pick the industry route as well as the tax and audit for sign-offs. So both qualifications are really comprehensive. They're international. They're very well recognised, and it's an absolute pleasure to deliver them.
Fabulous. Now, obviously, you mentioned a couple of options there. So how do learners know which one is right for them?
Well, it tends to start with the line manager and what their qualification is, to be fair. So traditionally you tend to have ACCA pick ACCA and CIMA pick CIMA, etc. But also on top of that, it's not just what the line manager's looking at, it's also the career path that you've chosen and that your organisation is supporting you developing, because these qualifications aren't training for the current position, they're also training and developing for the future. So it's to do with succession planning, it's to do with the development of the staff member long term. So all of those things really need to be considered, and it's important to do the research in advance to make sure that you're comfortable with that, and our pre-screen checks as well will ensure that we ask those questions. And, have you done the research? Are you confident? Because as my wonderful student there, Lucy mentioned earlier, thanks, by the way, for the big up in the classroom, is the fact that really you have to be committed, because this isn't a 2-day qualification. This is a year's of getting the profession that you want to be at. But look at David over here, managing director. When you qualify, it's wonderful things that happen.
What kind of support do learners get along the way in preparation for that? Obviously, we've mentioned some high-flying roles there. So what wider support does Access Training provide?
There's a massive amount of accessibility with us. We are experienced in terms of industry experience as well as teaching experience of the qualification. My teaching experience is over 25 years specifically in the profession. So there's lots of guidance and advice that can be given. And in Access, we're really privileged to have mentors in both CIMA and ACCA within our organisation, so that you can come to us and actually get advice of what's it like being an auditor, what's it like doing accounts prep, what's it like doing FD work, for example. And so it gives all of that information. The next part of it's the review. We keep in touch with the employers at all times. So there's a transparency there, and that builds a real solid foundation of understanding and support for the student or learner that is not normal within just training for an exam. So that everybody's there to build and support that student and help them develop with the role inside the organisation, outside the organisation, extra qualification homework, technical knowledge being applied in the place of work. And I know that as far as a culture within the organisation is concerned, it's very important to add value back into the workplace environment. And so that's going to create the second step. That second step is, as you rightly said, these are higher levels. So you're looking at degree, post-degree at MSc level when you're talking chartered, just for those who aren't part of the industry. And to that extent, we're going to do bite-sized elements for things like emotional intelligence, problem solving. As I mentioned, the likes of the Excel and the Power BI, all of these sorts of things, as well as management, leadership, conflict in the workplace, and the mentors. These are all things that are unique to Access training and are special, that comes from the culture of our leader over here, and driven and inspired by him.
And would you say that your experience sort of echoes that, would you say?
Yeah, definitely. I think Janice and all of the trainers are very, very knowledgeable. They've got a lot of experience, and that's very helpful sort of from a learner point of view, hearing all of these different experiences and sort of taking as much knowledge as I can. It helps a lot, and it sort of sets like a pathway towards like the knowledge that I want to gain.
Goals.
Yeah.
So David, you mentioned your own journey through accountancy previously, but how do apprenticeships today compare to that 10 years ago when you did yours, do you think?
Well, I didn't do it via an apprenticeship.
No?
Until 2017, the chartered model for an apprenticeship just wasn't there. So we had to pay commercially. If the apprenticeship option would have been available at the time, absolutely we would have done it. One of the things that we, as Janice has kind of alluded to, making more of an all-rounded person rather than kind of going into a classroom, getting some technical knowledge is great, but the apprenticeship does give you that ability to give that bit kind of as a wider experience. Apprenticeships since 2016 have improved significantly. We've moved away from frameworks where a lot of it was just kind of assessing work to a much more taught model. So there's big improvements. And certainly, as I say, if I was to go back to my journey, I would definitely gone down that model.
So what advice would you give to someone starting their career now?
Do it. I think it's a really simple thing to say, but I think momentum in education is really important. So move as quickly as you can on these things. Not just because it's all kind of it helps our business, but it's easy to fall out of education. It's easy to fall out of the momentum of delivery. So having a year's gap or 2 years gap between any training and learning that you do, now's not quite the right time. And then now's not the right time again. And will it ever be the right time? So being able to get on that, ultimately it's easier to learn when you're younger. The old saying of the teaching an old dog new tricks. But yeah, that younger model, being able to do that is something certainly that we'd encourage where possible.
Yeah, fab. And I know we touched on obviously the potential defunding of these qualifications earlier. So what advice would you give to employers who are considering thinking this?
Do it. It does feel like the right time, and this is why we've launched into the level 7 now is to make sure that we're giving our employers, the stakeholders, the companies that we work with, and the individuals the opportunity we work with where that might be getting taken away from them in the next few months. Sure.
And now there's often some confusion around the apprenticeship levy. Is there anything that really employers should know? The
apprenticeship levy is an interesting one. First and foremost, it's based on the payroll bill. So if you have an annual payroll of over 3 million, you pay 0.5% of your payroll bill above that into the levy. It can only be spent on apprenticeships. Have to spend the money that's in your account. You can't spend it on anything other than apprenticeships, certainly for the moment. That might change with the growth and skills levy. But if you don't spend it within 2 years, that money gets sent back to Treasury. So essentially, it's a cost to the business that they get no benefit from. So there's a real message to an employer there is to just make sure that you check in that you aren't sending essentially a cost to your business back to the Treasury for no benefit where you have the option to do that.
Mm-hmm. And are there any myths that you'd like to kind of bust about funding high-level apprenticeships?
Yeah, I mean, age is the big one. There's a huge misconception with apprenticeships. The age, I suppose, and level, that you are disqualified, you're not eligible if you're over a certain age or if you have a degree. It's not true. You're not able to undertake an apprenticeship at a level under the qualification in the same area that you've had education at, but a degree does not in any way make you ineligible from further learning.
And what about sort of national insurance contributions? Are there any implications around that?
It's the big point at the moment with the increase in national insurance contributions that have come in. Anyone under the age of 25, the employer doesn't have to pay that 15% contribution.
Now, obviously, recently in the news, we've announced a partnership with University of Sunderland, which is obviously huge and massive. But what would you say the partnership brings to the programme? Anything that you'd like to highlight?
Pathways is the big one. It's something that we're working a lot with and talking to an awful lot of members of staff from across the faculties within the university. We're working with the accounting and finance school to look at last year's graduates and to see if we can help them find placements and find employers to further their learning, which again we're able to do at no charge. And then the same with this year's final year students. So recently we went into a seminar to educate and inform those students in their final year about what options are available to them afterwards. So there's a lot of really positive things that we're able to do there.
And how important is that connection for employers and apprentices, do you think?
It's really important. I think one of the, as Janet's mentioned before, one of the things that we're going to try and make sure that we do is through the apprenticeship is offer that wraparound. So make sure that those work readiness elements are there, are taught. One of the big barriers we know that employers have to taking on graduates is that lack of work experience, real life experience. What we want people to do is be able to, as soon as they can, after finishing their degree, get a good job, as is defined, but make sure they're doing that and start essentially make sure that they're getting that value for money from their degree, rather than kind of letting it accrue the interest and not be paying off your student loan. We need to be getting that money back for people.
And the big question to kind of finish off with, really, why is it all worth it? So if you had to sum up the value of a level 7 apprenticeship in one sentence, what would it be? It's a biggie. Janice.
The apprenticeship gives two things: the company the support to enable their staff, and the individual support to learn those skill sets straight away.
Anything you want to add, David?
I suppose that my one sentence would be that it's an opportunity, a huge opportunity for the company, the employers, the learners. Now is the time to get chartered.
And Lucy, last but not least?
Yeah, similar to David. I think it's a huge opportunity for me personally. It's something that I probably wouldn't have been able to do if I didn't sort of go down the apprenticeship route. It costs a lot of money, and I think just the doors that it's going to open in the future, fingers crossed, I think it'll definitely be worth it.
Well, we wish you all the best, I'm sure. So thank you guys. Well, that sums up the power of a level 7 accountancy apprenticeship in a nutshell. So thanks for listening to Access All Areas. For more stories, opportunities and insights, head to our website. That is accesstraining.org. Until next time.